Alrighty. Hi everybody, how are we doing tonight? So sorry for the late reply, like getting on a couple minutes late. Had a minor emergency just like a minute ago, but we're okay now, so. Alrighty. Let me do a quick review in the chat. Thanks so much everybody for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. Hello Mina. Hi Patricia. Hi John. Wow, from Scotland. That is amazing. I am from Clan Grant. So we have my family has some history way back in Scotland as well. So very, very cool. Love Scotland. Hi Mellow Yellow. Hi Terry. Hello Angela. Hi Wendy. Glad you can be here. I really appreciate you being here. All right. Hello Barbara. Terry. All right. So here we go tonight. Happy Friday the 13th. Hope everybody's doing well. Hopefully this little bunny rabbit won't give us too much trouble tonight with the wood burning. And just love it. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Lynx Lady. I hope I got everybody in the chat for a hello. And Wendy, I'm glad that you learned a lot from the first bunny. That's great. So, Barbara, I'm glad that you're not in the tornado damage as well. So, hello, Earthborn Graphics. So glad that you guys can all join in. Hello, Corbin. Glad to see you here tonight. Hi, Dennis. Okay, so like I said, a little bit late getting on the live stream tonight, but everything is okay. And my burner I turned on a little bit late as well, but I think it should be good to go. So let's go ahead and we'll switch screens. And we'll get back over to our main screen here. Oh, I have lost the rabbit. Here it is. Okay, we're good. I hope everybody has had a lovely week. I'm gonna have to relocate myself, but that's okay. We'll just go over there. Okay. All right, so if you missed last week, it is available on Patreon. So you can go zip over to Patreon. If you want to join, it's as little as $5 a month. So that's very cool. And you get access to a ton of content. There's a remarkable amount of content out there. And so this is our 36th live stream. So there's like over 70 hours of footage on Patreon. So if you want to, you can go ahead and check that out. And I guess let's go ahead and dive into it. So last week we started out by wood burning the eye. And I might zoom in just a tad here for some detail. So we were working on the eye and we got a nice little bit of shading in there. And then we kind of just started working out from there to try to develop life around the eye. And then whenever I wood burn, there's a lot of times you see these inverted V's. So you'll burn those kind of first. I tend to wood burn from the darks to the lights. That's just kind of my personal preference. But you can even go from light to dark. But I find it's easier that I don't lose my guidelines if I go from dark to light. And then we also talked about burning these whiskers. As far as putting on a black background, I'm really liking how dainty they are right now. So I'm wondering if we want to go ahead and do a black background on this one and painstakingly burn around the whiskers or not. I could even do just like a mini class on how to wood burn around whiskers. We could do that too. So just thinking. All right, so here we go. I'll probably go ahead and dive in with let's see, trying to decide what burner I want to use. In the first video, we worked with both the razor tip and the Walnut Hollow Creative Versa tool. So I like the razor tip because I can get some of these darker areas a little bit quicker, whereas working with the razor tip, it's a little bit harsher feel of fur. It's coarse. It's a little bit rough for my take. For my liking. So I tend to block in some of the fur with the razor tip and then go back and kind of blend things out a little bit with the Versa tool. So we'll kind of maybe switch back and forth on that. So I think I might dive into this darker section in here. I like to establish my darks before I move lighter. So give me a moment here and I'm going to reposition this and we'll start working in these darker zones here. I'll switch over to the razor tip and kind of block those in and see about getting some dark values down first and then moving on from there. So I am using the small round shader from about 10 years ago. They've changed it slightly, but I did modify this point. I've angled it with sandpaper just a tad to get it more of a pointy feel. But it's not like one of those skews that is really thin and sharp. This one has a little bit more thickness to it, and I find that it holds the heat just a little bit better. And it doesn't like dig into the wood as much. So, Barbara, you like the lighter background too? Cool. And you use the Versa tool and the Coalwood. Very good. You kind of go back and forth. Yeah, they multiple burners have their pros and their cons for sure. And for the longest time, I did wood burnings with the Walnut Hollow Creative Versa tool only, and did just fine. It does take longer though to kind of develop some of those darker values. That's where I think the razor tip kind of comes in handy. So I haven't used this since we were last burning. It's still set at like a 4.5, so we can go ahead and try to jump in there. Oh, and I don't use this little guy, this little bean bag, when I'm using the razor tip because the handle is so much closer to the point. So, hi Rich. Glad you can be here tonight. Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and start down in here. Whenever you turn on a wire tip burner, sometimes it's helpful to test it. Okay, see, that's a little bit too hot. So I'm going to turn it down to more of a 4. That's a bit more manageable. I don't like that scorch you get with a little bit of that ghosting around there. I'm not too crazy about that. So I like a little bit more control. You can always blow on the point too if you need to. Okay. So we're just using that back and forth motion. And Terry, you see those stop spots I just got in there? That totally happens. I have a giant shadow on my head. That's kind of fun. I hadn't noticed that. It's my camera. Sorry, guys. I'll kind of sneak over here a little bit. Okay. I kind of keep changing up my setup as far as where the camera is, and I move the microphone. Hopefully my sound is a little bit better tonight. And I want to thank everybody for their comments on Facebook. I did put out a couple posts in a few different places talking about what are your biggest challenges as far as what textures do you want to master or become comfortable with. And your feedback was a huge help. I'm trying to design some more tutorials and see which direction I want to go. And so I want to go where there's more demand. Probably the most common help was fur. People really wanted help with fur, so I'll continue to create more feedback and more videos on that. So back and forth, little motions right now. And you can see that my burner is, or I guess I'm making lighter values over here just because I'm moving the burner a little bit more faster. And when we burn these dark values, they tend to push backwards and give more depth, and then the lighter fur kind of pulls forward. And with that dark value and light value, you can really kind of push and pull your values to create more depth. If you find that you have a subject that's not very like rounded, it doesn't have very much depth to it, you might need to check your values, because you want to make sure that your darks are dark enough and your lights are light enough. Thanks, Lynx Lady. Thank you, Angela. And I can still get some nice texture with this point if I rock it up, just like the Versatool, and I take a more kind of an aggressive bite, an aggressive stroke, I can get more texture. If I rock it down, I'll get more shading. So I know we've kind of shown this a little bit, but if you rock that point up and you get that upper tip, you get more texture. If you rock it down, you're going to get a softer feeling. So realism, I think, is all about texture and shading, and value, of course, but now, anytime you're working in a smaller area, it's easier to like kind of scorch and overburn with this Versatool razor tip. So if you're working in really tight areas with the razor tip, it's okay to turn that burner down, that temperature down, if you feel like you need a little bit more control. We're just going to burn the paws here. Focusing on some of the darker areas first. Rich is asking, lighter values add depth. Yes, they do. You need both the lighter values and the darker values to create depth. You can't really have light without dark or dark without light. You need that full range of values to create the more well-rounded subject. Now, if you want to kind of modify that a little bit, you can burn only on the darker value scale, like the mid-range to dark with a few lights creates a really somber mood, really dark feeling, whereas if you stay on the lighter side of the shading scale with the majority of your values on the lighter side, it creates a more light and airy feeling, which was a lot of times very good for baby portraits. But you really need to have at least somewhere in your burning pure black and pure white to kind of get that full range in there. But very good question, Rich. So I'm going to go through and just add in a little bit of these textured fur areas by putting in some of the darker values. And you can always go back and darken things up. That's totally fine. So you can see I'm really following the reference photo right now to kind of block in some of these main features that I transferred over. But once those are in place, you can kind of veer away from these a little bit with something abstract like fur. As long as you get the main features like up in the eye and the ears and all that, and of course around the paws, the body of the fur can be a little bit more loose and flexible, although there is a way to see like muscle structure under the fur. So like, you know, you can see kind of the shoulder blade and some of the muscle structure of critters. So you don't want to stray too far from the reference photo, but a little bit back and forth is okay. A little bit, doesn't have to be so tight like a portrait. I hope that makes sense. Rich says, do clouds and snow need to be shaded? I remember you said there is no pure white. Absolutely. I have whippered clouds and snow, and the majority of that is going to be shaded to some extent. The only time you won't have any shading is like the brightest highlights. And if you put, if you can't see those with the naked eye, you can put that in your, like a photo editing program or something, and tweak the values, and you're able to see so much more information in those light areas. There's a lot of information in there to burn. So you do want to shade more with snow and clouds. There is very rarely pure white. Like around the eyes, you'll see like the waterline is some of those times where I have pure white. Even in white clothing, there's a lot of values you can add in there for sure. John Brown, I am so glad that you're here, and thank you. I'm glad that you like the tutorials and the live streams. That's great. Yeah, I know what you mean. I've lost my mojo. Oh, you say mojo too? I've lost my mojo a few times over the years, just trying to struggle and find your way back into that artistic mode. And I totally call it losing my mojo. And I just saw that you wrote the same thing. So that's, I relate for sure. I'm glad that you found inspiration and you're getting your mojo back again for sure. A couple years ago, I think it was actually last year, I was really struggling and wound up getting on YouTube and looking up, I don't know how I stumbled across it, but I found an artist that was talking about art and doing interviews and all that, and that pulled me out of my mojo for sure, out of that funk, and gave my mojo back. So it's easy to get in an artistic funk, and can be difficult to get out of it for sure. And sometimes it takes someone else just to help us out, whether they know it or not. And it's very cool, and I'm very honored and glad that you're coming back. That's most important. Down but never out, for sure. So Rich, you're working on a mountain scene again? Okay, with the bikes. Okay, cool. Yeah, you do a lot of bikes. That's awesome. A very dark trail with mountains in the background. Okay, so your bikers in the foreground are going to be much darker, whereas your mountains in the distance are going to be lighter. Whenever you talk about scenery, you have to flip the dark and light thing. So normally with something like this, with an up-close subject, your darks are going to push away and your lights are going to pull forward. When you talk about something in scenery, you're going to have atmospheric influence that takes over this whole thing. So your darks are going to be closest, relatively, and your lights are going to be farther away. So the mountains in the distance need to be lighter than your bikers up front. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so it takes me a while to blend with the razor tip, so I'm going to try to just really focus on blocking in some of these darkest areas and see what we can do here. It's funny, you know, when talking about shading, there's always an exception to the rule, and shading is no exception. And that when you're dealing with little subjects like this that are up close, dark values push back, light values pull forward. And then scenery is pretty easy too, because the lighter values are in the distance and things get more clear and darker as they come forward. It's kind of, there's a mid-range in there that you have to kind of balance out that can be a little bit tricky. But other than that, it's all pretty fascinating. And my dad taught me that about the atmospheric influence. He's an oil painting artist and taught me, you know, things get lighter as they go in the distance. Hello, hand engraving. Glad you can be here. Okay, so in the case of these paws overlapping, again, dark values push back, light values pull forward. So my darkest values, even though on the reference photo it's kind of a toss-up, my darkest values are going to be the paw that's behind. So I can go through and add that now and add that a little bit darker to help create more definition between the paws overlapping. And it's going to be more exaggerated than the reference photo, but that's just okay. You need that sense of separation there. So Earthborn Graphics says, I decided to start my first project with the wolf silhouette on the hill from your book. Okay, cool. You recommended a smaller tip for outlining and starting the black in the smaller areas, but the thin tip created ugly texturing. Okay. Versus the shading tip creating a smooth look in the larger black areas. Okay, so you might just have to kind of experiment with which point works best for you. If you have a thin tip, you have to really back off on your pressure because it can dive down in and then the wood grain is going to mess you up. So that was a recommendation as far as a general kind of feel or suggestion for the tips. But I always suggest that you flip your piece of wood over and play around on the backside and find what tip really works best for you. Now, if you're having some really kind of splotchy issues going on, ugly texturing, you might back off on your pressure, because if you're pressing very hard, it can get a little bit ugly. Your heat too, if your heat is too high, it can also make some crazy things. Good night, Beverly. Thanks for being here. Links Lady says, you appear to be a lot more comfortable with the razor tip than in previous videos. It kind of goes back and forth, honestly. Fur is very, I think, easy for me. I don't really struggle very often with fur, and so it's abstract to me, so I can pick up a different burner and be pretty well okay. Now, if I were trying to create like a portrait or some smooth shading, I would really struggle with the razor tip. But because I don't really care too much if I get stop spots or irregularities in the fur, that's okay right now. So my biggest concern with the razor tip is controlling the temperature to my liking. Whereas smooth shading, I would take a lot longer with this than I would with the Versatool. Just because the Versatool tends to have a more even temperature, I think. It's more gradual. You don't get those like massive burn marks and then nothing, no value whatsoever. So that's a very good point, for sure, Links Lady. I am definitely more fluid and free when it comes to burning fur. It's easier, I think. So Earthborn Graphics says, my basement is 55 to 60 degrees this time of year, so I'm fighting temperature, which doesn't help. I understand. Do you have a heater or something that you could plug into a different outlet, of course, and like blow in the general area of what you're working on? We're on solar power, so during the bright sunny days I can run a heater and it doesn't cost me anything. But I know that a lot of people are struggling right now with energy bills. So if that doesn't work, then I totally understand. But having some sort of a secondary source of heat blowing right on your area where you're working might help with that. But that's difficult. I know. I used to work outside a lot, and it's a challenge. So John Brown says, when I look back on all my previous project, I see now how flat and unfinished they are, but now watching you in action, I see how much I didn't know, so now I have a whole new set of skills to work on. That is fantastic. Very, very good. Yeah, a lot of times I've had art in the past that just, I thought it was finished, and I look back and it's like, it's flat. There's something off. There's something missing that I couldn't quite pinpoint, and it took me a while of trial and error and studying other people's work and just really thinking and looking at my own work. Sometimes I'll just set it down and then come back and reassess. It's like, okay, well, I think, this area needs improved here. And it helps to kind of get back and take a look. Okay, so I turned my burner up and it's a little bit too hot there. So we'll put in a little bit more on the paw. Then you can always go back and add a few more layers to darken up an area. And if you just move the burner a little bit slower, it really helps to get those darker values. And again, this fur is really chunky and kind of coarse right now. We'll blend that out with the other, with the Versatool here in a bit. And again, going over and adding more layers, it really, really helps. One layer usually looks really flat, so add a second layer. The more layers of fur that you get, I think the better. Up to a certain point, if you burn everything, including these little unburned little light sections, it'll look flat again. So you got to make sure that you leave some of these little tidbits through there, especially with the lighter fur. And even with the darker fur, it's nice to get some highlights in there. Earthborn Graphics says, I have a red chicken heat lamp I use when I do wood turning. Okay, not sure if that would help. I also have an electric radiator, but the air will blow straight up. Okay, that chicken lamp, if it's not an infrared thing and it actually, like, you can feel the heat, that might be perfect. If you can afford running that, having that little heat source kind of right in your area might capture just enough heat for the burner to work a little bit better. That would be a really good point. Wendy is asking, do I ever use a mask for smoke? On rare occasions I do. I usually use the Walnut Hollow Creative Versatool when I'm burning the black backgrounds, and that's about the only time I get a lot of smoke. Everything else is, I turn my burner down, and I don't do like you see in some of those YouTube videos where you put the point down and there's a big cloud of smoke. Sometimes that's the wood they're using and the temperature that they are using. I try not to do that. I don't like scorching the wood. I don't like damaging it. The little bit of smoke that generally comes off of my working area is not very much, so it doesn't bother me. I have asthma, and it still is fine. It doesn't bother me. But if I have hours and hours of large, black, solid surfaces, I will wear a respirator and a face mask. It's like an all-in-one unit to where it keeps the smoke out of my eyes and out of my lungs, which is kind of handy. So here we have an overlap again of the bunny's like forearm and elbow. I guess they have elbow joints, but here at the bend, and then it goes down to the tummy. I'm going to accentuate that and really push the darker values on the belly to make the forearm come forward. So I really think about overlap when it comes to wood burning. What is in the distance? What is in the foreground? Even if it's something right in front of you, like a bunny. But this will help to create that sense of depth. Because without that, this whole thing here is going to look like a blob, and it's going to kind of take away from some of our realism. Just trying to figure out where I am. It's easy to get lost in this fur, so sometimes you have to add in some other structure to see. Okay, that's where I'm at. It's easy to get lost. Okay. Hello, Hamilorian. How long does a piece like this usually take you to finish? This is a 5x7. So if I'm just burning and not instructing or talking, maybe 2-3 hours, depending on the complexity. A little bit more than that if it's a lot of dark values. But 5x7, 3-ish hours, 2-3 hours, depending on what all is in there. Hello, Chris Jones. Your shop stays cool most of the winter, even in Southeast Texas. You have 2 electric heaters that you run when you're working in there. Okay, cool. Yeah, there was a time when we were living with my mom at my mom's place. I had 2 young kids, and we had nowhere else to go, but we moved into my mom's house, and my studio was in her garage, which had no controlled heat or air conditioning. So in the summertime, it was brutal. I had to work after midnight because it was just so hot. And then in the wintertime, it was brutally cold, and so I would huddle up to a little heater. So I totally understand the challenge that it is when you are trying to work in cold environments or hot environments. Been there, totally. My Captain Jack wood burning I made in my mom's garage. So that was pretty fun. A lot of that was burned at night just because it was too hot in there. I think it was the summertime. When I first started this would take me a lot longer. I think as you get more comfortable with what you need to do, it goes faster. That's what I always tell my husband. If I were to re-burn some of my other burnings, some of the big ones, I would do it so much faster because I wouldn't be so afraid of messing things up. Because a lot of my big wood burnings, I'd never tried that technique before, and I tried it on these massive scale, and I wound up taking a lot of time because I was very cautious, and I had to burn and reburn areas for a lot of that. Now that I'm more comfortable, I think, with the tools and the subject, I could burn it a lot faster. But that just kind of goes with any art form as far as being more comfortable with it. Barbara, you can't imagine working in a garage. Yep. You keep teasing your husband that you'd have lots of room to work on wood burning in his new garage. Very true. Yep. Very good, Mina. Yeah, Hamilorian, I agree. It's there's a learning curve for sure as far as being able to create anything. I grew up watching my dad paint, and I couldn't believe how he was able to do what he did so quickly. A lot of the mechanics and everything, I think, become kind of automatic. It's kind of like when you learn to drive a car. In the beginning, you have to really focus on what you're doing, everything. You have to, turn off the music, really focus, no talking in the car, pay attention, no eating, no drinking. You have to just, your entire focus is on driving the car. And as you develop skill and you get better at it, you can kind of go into that autopilot mode where you're driving the car, but it doesn't take a huge amount of mental effort, and it becomes kind of more automatic. So I think that's the same thing with wood burning or any art form. Just give yourself more time, more practice, and it becomes more automatic for sure. Okay, so we're getting some of our darker areas in here. It's really chunky. I might do just a little bit more of these dark sections, and then I might switch over to the other burner. I'm going to put some of these in really fast. I've turned up my burner to almost a 5, and so I'm going to go real fast to block some of these areas in. And sometimes I'll do this just to kind of block in some of these areas. I work in stages. Sometimes I do darks, all the darks throughout the project. Sometimes, like we did around the eye, I'll start with the darks and then I'll kind of expand outward from there. Barbara, yes, that's a great mental aspect. Let go of the fear and just keep at it, for sure. Barbara says he keeps reminding me that I have the art cottage. As soon as we get his garage items out of there, you can start using it. Gotcha. Yep. I understand that for sure. I keep telling myself one of these days I'll actually have a studio. One of these days. It's on my bucket list. Thanks, Barbara. And so you can see I can do some shorter strokes to make more of a cluster of dark areas. And then, so here we have cluster of dark areas. And then you can go and do longer strokes to kind of blend it in. And again, this is on a level 5, which is a little bit hotter than I normally work, but I'm just trying to almost do like a quick under sketch with this. Again, I feel that fur can be very abstract. Okay, so I think I might kind of pause there. Again, it's pretty rough. It's real chunky. It's a little bit chaotic, but that's okay. All right, so now I'm going to switch over to the Versatool. And yeah, it's hot. Okay. Sometimes I turn it on, but I forget to turn on my power supply underneath the desk and all that. Hello, the woodchucker Doug. You're saying, it is obvious that you are extremely comfortable while burning. Your talent shows with every live stream. Thank you. Staying engaged with all of us and maintain your ability to just keep going. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's again, I think I've kind of reached that autopilot feature mentality where I can kind of multitask a little bit better. You know, like driving with the radio and having a burger and all that. Not sure that's a very good safety thing, but so far so good. Thank you, the woodchucker Doug. I appreciate it. So Terry, one of your problems is letting go of the fear and in turn makes me not get to it. Okay, cool. Yep, I understand that too. Alrighty, so again, I like to work from dark to light. So the darkest area is actually the belly. That's the farthest away, I think. But I'm going to work on this paw over here because I think that technically would be the farthest away. Okay, so we're going to start burning in here, and you see how our fur is really coarse and chunky right now? We're going to work on that a little bit more and kind of soften it up a bit. But I'm still going to use that back and forth motion, and we're going to put in multiple layers of fur. In areas here with this highlight, you want to make sure that you leave some of that unburned wood. So I'm going to rock the point up and get a little bit more texture in there. And then go back in and add more layering. John Brown says, loving how you are using 2 different burners for coarse and soft textures. I've always used either my VersaTool or my Peter Childs, but never both together on the same project. Again, like I said in the beginning, for most of my wood burning, I wouldn't really call it a career, but time that I've been wood burning, I would use this only for coarse and softer texture. I'm doing this just because I'm going back and forth with the different burners, just because it's a little bit quicker to get some of those darker values in there. But yeah, it is fun to kind of use some of the benefits of both burners. Hey Lex, get your brothers to help out too. Thank you. Tell them right away. Okay. Okay, so you see this is starting to develop a little bit more. It's getting a little bit more life to it for sure.
You guys did substantial cleanup today.
So I can go back over these dark areas and richen them up. I find that it's kind of weird, but I find that the super black values from the VersaTool are more rich and have almost, if you could say, like, it has more flavor, almost like coffee. But it's a richer, deeper black value than with the razor tip. And I think it's because the heat penetrates down deeper into the wood with the VersaTool, whereas the razor tip kind of just like hits the surface and almost kind of, you can really scorch the top of the surface. But as far as dark values, I find that the VersaTool creates just some really beautiful, rich tones that is, I find, kind of hard to get with the razor tip. So once you block in some of those values with the razor tip, a lot of times I go back to the VersaTool and kind of touch them up and darken them and make them more rich. So Barbara, your first burner was the Walnut Hollow Creative Burner. Cool. And then you picked up the VersaTool and the Coalwood after that. Cool. You use all 3 at times. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, there are so many burners out on the market that for me to tell you which one is best, I don't think is very fair, because not only does it depend on what you're trying to do, what your goals are, what surface are you trying to burn on. There's so many different factors there that play into selecting a wood burner, even your budget. You know, how much are you able and willing to spend on a wood burning tool? That's why I like the VersaTool, because I can do 99% of everything that I want and need to do with this tool, and it doesn't cost, I mean, it's less than 50 bucks. It's like less than 40 bucks. So, but when I first started, I thought, you know, everybody else is using the razor tip, and I thought maybe I should try it too, and it'll solve all my problems. And I found out that it really didn't. It helped in certain instances, and in others it's like, I think I prefer the little cheapy tool. So again, just depends on what you're trying to do and your personal preference, and there's a lot of factors there. So, Larry, you use the Versatool and the Optima too. Okay, cool. Yeah, I would like to try the Coalwood and the Optima as well, and just kind of try to get more knowledgeable on those other burners. Okay, so I'm going to blend a little bit more of these darker values into the midtones. And I do look back and forth to my reference photo a lot. I know some people say that they try to look at their reference photo as little as possible. When it comes to realism, I find that I have to look back and forth as much as possible, just because I want my project to look as accurate as possible. So that's why you see me looking back and forth a lot. Hey, Corbin. You were doing, Corbin says, was doing a horse mane this week. What kind of step-by-step process do you use for hair? What tools and tips do you use, and what order do you do it in? Shading, detail, would love your input. So a lot of the times when I'm wood burning something like a horse's mane or long hair, I will start with my darks first. I generally start with my darks first. Excuse me. I would want to use a tool that can achieve higher temperatures very quickly. So if you'll notice with the Versatool, I'm going to have a hard time making a long dark stroke on maximum heat. Whereas if I were to do the razor tip, I could do that same stroke much darker. Manes and long fur are all about long continuous strokes. You'll have some areas where you'll have to kind of build up some darker values with shorter strokes, but for the most part you want the longer, smoother strokes. So I would block it in with something with a high heat, like a razor tip, and then soften it up with either turn the razor tip down or any wire tip burner, and then kind of blend it out and make it smoother. But I would go from dark to light, texture first, and then shading over the top to kind of smooth things out. So I hope that helps. Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, most of the time I use just the Versatool, but a lot of people use wire tip burners, and so I'm trying to kind of show a little bit of both. Okay, so we can probably darken up this farthest paw just a little bit more. Before we tackle this next one. And then we can touch up some of these darker values. John is asking, are there any wood types you don't like to work with? Absolutely. Pine, I don't work on pine. It smokes too much, it's too irregular, and it kills my lungs. I've actually had to boil the sap out of the wood before the wood would take a burn, so it was very uneven and frustrating for me. There's a very cheap wood called Paulina. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's almost like a cousin to bamboo or something. It's a little bit very veiny and kind of weird. And it produces a very speckled wood burning. So I like the smoother woods. Woods that create a smoother burning, like the basswood. Birch is good. Yeah, don't burn on plywood either, because the glue is very toxic. So And then the rest of your question is, I don't like poplar. I find it a bit too soft and always seem to get a lot of random spotting with it regardless of how well I sand it. Okay. Yeah, I don't work a lot with poplar either. We do have local aspen wood that we harvest out of our backyard that I tend to like, but I'm not been very fond of poplar either. Birch and basswood are probably, and aspen are probably my top ones. Larry has a question about sprinkling snowflakes. Go ahead. Just throw your question out there. Okay, so let's try to develop some roundness on this paw. Now, I know as we've talked about in the past, whenever you want to create a rounded aspect to something, you're going to want to shade on both sides. So you can see on the bottom side of the bunny's arm, there's dark values, and then it comes up and it's actually lightest about right in the mid-range, and then as it comes up here, we have more shading. That is going to create that rounded appearance. So that's what we really want to capture here, making sure that we have darker shading at the top and the bottom, and then a lighter range in the middle to create kind of a rounded highlight. So that's something that we really want to focus on next, is to maintain those shading areas. And then you can take these darker zones and kind of pull them up a little bit, and then we'll try to marry the different zones, the lights with the darks with the midtones, and so forth. So you'll see that I'll start to soften what I've already done with the razor tip. It'll produce a much softer feel. Barbara, that is a good point. I'm not sure if you're talking about this burner, but if you do have the Walnut Hollow Creative Versatool, you'll notice that the point is a long ways away from the handle, whereas opposed to the razor tip, your hand is really close. So you can see the difference here of your grip. The Versatool is a little bit unruly to hold on to when you first start, whereas the razor tip is more like writing with a pencil. So what I've found is the best way to get around that with the Versatool is to use something like a soft bean bag or a rolled up sock, even a sock full of rice, anything to kind of prop your hand up to get it into a better position. So whenever you see me work with the Versatool, I always have this little bean bag thing too, because then it lifts my wrist up and it gets into a much better comfortable position. Otherwise you're going to have like wrist pain, and it's bad. I've even had some people burn accidentally with that heat ring, touching the wood and stuff. So elevate your hand, use a prop, whatever you need to do if you're using the Versatool. Larry is saying, okay, thanks. I did a second burning of the snowy forest, better than the first one. Cool. That was a fun project. So if you missed that project, it's posted on Patreon. So we did a wonderful snowy forest, and we did a snowman, and then we speckled paint on them. So we kind of splattered paint to look like snowflakes with acrylic paint, and it turned out really cool. So Larry has it all done to the point where you're ready to do the snowflakes. So using a small brush. How do you do that again? Okay, so you're going to want to mix with a small paintbrush. You'll want to make sure that your paintbrush, the coarser it is, sometimes the better. You'll get bigger flecks of snow. But put a little bit of acrylic paint on even a lid or something that you don't want to keep, a paper plate, whatever, and kind of mix it up with a tiny bit of water. That tiny bit of water will help it flow more. And then turn your burning over to start with, and just do a test flick, and see how it goes. If you get like a big stripe probably back off on the water. If you flick and it's just like a mist, anyway, you'll want to experiment with the water to paint ratio, but definitely take your burning and turn it over, or even have like a black piece of paper and start flicking and just test flick on something else. And then when you are comfortable, go ahead and use that same ratio and just flick it on your burning. Try flicking really close and really far away. The farther away you are, probably you're going to get more of a mist. The closer you get, the more you're going to get like bigger snowflakes. I hope that helps. And you can always rewatch some of the videos that we did as well. So flick the bristles with your finger. You could like flick it like this, or you could grab the end of the paintbrush, pull it back, and let it go. So, I don't know if I have a paintbrush here. Hey, Lexi.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Would you grab me a paintbrush? Just any paintbrush is fine. A bigger one is better if you can.
Like
Oh,
this?
that's fine.
Okay. It's a broken
So
one.
this is a broken paintbrush, but I wouldn't try this one this big, but you can either like load it up and then flick it like this and go like that, which is fun, or you can grab the end of that and pull it back and just flick this way. So experiment with both of those. Even an old toothbrush, like it's been used and it's all fluffy and all that, try an old toothbrush. The coarser, I think, the brush, the more you're going to get those big snowflakes. The finer brush, like a smooth bristle brush, you're going to get probably just a fine mist. So kind of experiment with that and see what you get. John Brown, yes, definitely go take a look at Walnut Hollow. Their basswood is amazing. Once you burn on basswood, it's hard to go back to anything else. Especially if you want a more realistic kind of smooth appearance. Okay, sorry guys, I'm trying to catch up here. Yes, Larry, test it first. That's what I did when we used that on live. Cool. Very good Earthborn graphics, very good. Yeah, Terry, cover your table. I still have paint on my table that hasn't come off. Okay. Rich, yes, we're having pizza tonight. Okay. Cool, guys. All right, we're going to keep going here. My gosh. I really was trying to get this done in 2 sessions, but we'll just see what we can do. But great questions, everybody. Great questions. Yes, Corbin, I've used splatter technique for stars as well, and it's way cool. Where is that? Oh, it's right there. So my Versatool right now is on max heat, and you'll notice that it just doesn't put out as much heat as the razor tip, but sometimes that's okay. Okay, so really trying to create the roundedness and softness of these paws, so I'll try to really focus on that. We'll try to get the paws finished up before we go to something else. And if you want those darker values with the Versatool, you can totally get those. Just slow down and burn a little bit more slower and with purpose. So we have a little bit of a bend here in the paw, so we're going to make sure that we get a little bit of a darker shadow underneath to get that bend. So again, make sure that you use multiple layers for your fur. And then I'm going to put in another layer and kind of darken that up. I'm also rocking the point up into a more vertical position to get some darker, like really fine pieces of fur. And then once you get your kind of your darks in there, your midtones and your light midtones can go fairly quickly. Just make sure you add in a couple of layers to break up any irregular, or fur can get really too consistent, and so it helps to add more layers to kind of break up the monotony of fur, both in texture and shading. Okay, so it still looks pretty coarse. The paws are looking pretty coarse. More layering will help to soften that and blend that out. Okay, we're getting there. It's looking a little bit softer and more fluffy. I might also even kind of soften this edge on that back paw to make it look maybe a little bit more blurry, which a lot of times cameras have the focal point really in sharp focus. You know, it's close up and then it gets blurry in the background. So we can add a little bit of soft edges to maybe blur out that paw. That'll help push it back and give it a little bit more distance as well. Okay, so I'm going to put in a little bit more of these darker values here on the top side of the arm. Terry is asking, are bunny feet called feet or paws? You always hear about bunny feet being good luck. Not sure. That is really sweet. I don't know. They could be. Lexi, are bunny feet called feet or paws?
Paws.
They're paws. My daughter deems them as paws. So they are not.
No, they're beans.
They're beans?
Little beans.
Well, that's the bottom side of their paw.
Yeah.
So they're paws. And I don't think a rabbit's foot is very lucky for the rabbit. So when rabbits have them, they're called paws. When people have them, I guess they're called feet. I don't know. But my daughter says paws, so we'll call them paws. They're paws. Okay. Maybe more lucky that a bunny has paws and not feet. Okay. So Rich, you got lost in the ugly duckling stage last night. Ugh. But Livestream came to the rescue. Very good. In my head, I heard Minisa's advice of saying, don't give up and stay with it. Totally. You just got to keep going. Because, I mean, look at this. It's a scattered mess right now with what I have here. It's a mess. It would be very easy for me to just like throw in the towel and stop. But because I know the end goal and I know the steps to get there, I know that this is just another step in the process, that I have some ugly duckling stages. I could go through and show you how to wood burn a rabbit from top to bottom like a laser machine, but that's not really what I do. I focus on certain areas, darks first, and then mid-tones, and then finish it off with the lights. A lot of the times people get kind of, I don't know, maybe overwhelmed with trying to do everything at once. So if you can focus on a single value, darks, and you can go through the entire burning and put in all your darks, and that's how I teach in my books. Just do all the darks first, and then retrain your eye for the darker values. They're not quite dark, but they're darker than mid-tone. And so put those all in everywhere you can find a darker mid-tone and focus your eye on that. And then retrain your brain to look at just mid-tones, that middle range, and put all those in. And then when you're done with that, go ahead and just throw in a little bit of light mid-tones and you're pretty much done. You can always go back and reburn certain areas to adjust or darken as you need to, but if you follow the 5-step shading scale, I think it's so much easier to not be overwhelmed, knowing that this is just a stage and this is just a phase, and I will get all the darks in, and then the darker mid-tones, and then the mid-tones, and then the light mid-tones. So I find that that's probably a simpler way to learn as a beginning artist, knowing that there are steps to the end goal. I hope that makes sense, guys. And I'm kind of jumping all around here because to sit here and watch me wood burn for 2 hours and I do nothing but darks, I don't know, it might be a little frustrating to watch. So I'm kind of trying to like show you the end result a little bit faster. Okay, good, Rich. Okay, we're talking about pause. Very good. Thanks, Corbin. Hi, Jeff. Glad you can be here. Jeff is asking, would you use the background in the photo, blacken it, or go without a background? I tend to not put in the crazy backgrounds like this. It would take forever, and a lot of people don't quite get it right as far as all the background needs to be darker than the bunny. Most all of it. Even if the reference photo shows different, you got to push that background back, so it has to be darker. To burn something this detailed would quadruple the amount of time in the project. So I will either leave it unfinished, like just blank like this, or I could do a black background, or you can do a gradient background, but again, that's going to probably double the amount of time. Actually, a solid black background is twice as fast as a gradient background, which is crazy. But that's what I've found. So I will probably just, since this is a study, I'll just do the bunny. We make sure that we add a little bit of shading around the edges to give it that sense of form, and I won't do a background, I think, on this project. So good question, Jeff. Terry, you looked it up. It says rabbits have big feet, Lexi.
AirPods.
They help them to jump higher, dig faster, and fend off aggressive predators. Very good. Good to know, Terry. That's awesome. Okay, let's keep going here as I zip through the chat. Yeah, Rich, don't give up. Finish the project. The only time I think I've ever abandoned a wood burning, I think, is like completely quit, threw it away, and redid it on another piece of wood, is because my piece of wood was horrible and I didn't notice it in time, and I was trying to do like an intricate portrait. It's actually the portrait that I did, my very first portrait that I did on YouTube, and I had to start over because the quality of the wood was so crappy that I had to flush it. I just had to set it aside and pick a better piece of wood. So I'm definitely more cautious as far as what kind of wood I use. It was still basswood, but if you look at it in certain angles, you can kind of tell what's the better wood and what is not. So that, I think, is the only time that I actually had to scrap a project and start over. Fortunately, I started wood burning with the eyes, and I knew immediately that I couldn't save it because of the wood. And so I had to retransfer the whole thing, and it was a bit of a pain, but I went on to film that, and it's on YouTube. So and that's why I like to start with the eyes, because if you'll know within a short amount of time if the eyes are going to work out or not. If the eyes don't really work out on a project, you might strongly reconsider whether you should try again, sand it down, or otherwise reassess your current situation. I'm not one of those people that can burn an entire project and then leave the eyes to the last. It really drives me crazy. I have to know that the eyes are going to be spot on before I continue. But that's me. Okay, Larry, you're funny. I love it. You're learning a lot about the animal kingdom. Very good. Barbara, you like to move around on your pieces and work with the values and areas, but mostly do the darks first. I agree. Jeff says you did a magnificent job on the grasses for the bison. Thank you. That was a lot of burning around grass. I didn't etch it or anything like that. I burned around the grass blades, which is tedious. Okay. Yep, John, I understand. That's where you've gone wrong, is trying to do all the values at the same time with little or no layering. Totally explains why it's flat. Yeah. Got to get those base values in there first. Dive into those blacks first. I also think that when you start with the dark values first, it kind of gets you through that fear stage where you know you need to burn the wood and you need to burn it dark. A lot of times when we start with the lights, we're too tentative. We're afraid to go darker because we might mess it up. If you start with the darks and then move lighter, you kind of have that out of the way. Barbara, that is a very good point. If I were to do a black background now, I would lose a lot of this definition on the bottom of the paws, and I would have to plan for that. To where I would have to make sure that my darkest values in here are not quite pure black. Because if I were to put a black background in there, I would have to have that valuation separation, that pop. Very good. Hi, Jim. Glad you can be here. Yep. Oh, Barbara saw on a rabbit site, they call them paws. So, Larry, we have a debate. Paws, we call them paws. You know, if they're cute like that, they're paws. If they're running and they look, you know, ugly, I guess we call them feet. I don't know. Okay. All right. I'm still just trying to catch up in the chat, guys. I'll try to go back and forth here. So we just need a little bit more values, some mid-tones in here. So I like this light area right there. I'm just going to build in a few mid-tones on the bottom to blend in. I could just sit here and read the chat all day, guys. I love it. I know in some live streams, people will read questions to the person doing the art so they can keep doing the art without having to look up. But right now it's just
I have a suggestion.
just me. But
Mom.
What?
I have a suggestion.
What's that?
The bunny's name should be Bella.
Bella? I thought this was Mr. Whiskers.
Okay, yes.
We decided last
Mr.
week.
Whiskers.
This is Mr.
I like
Whiskers.
That more. I think Mr. Whiskers is
Uh-huh.
very cute. It's kind of hard to say.
Mr. Whiskers.
I kept saying Mr. Whiskers.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just adding a little bit more layering in here. Okay. Question time. Okay, question from Terry. I have wood charging plates that I want to burn my dogs on, but I don't know what kind of wood it is. Any idea on how I can find out? Wood charging. You mean wood burning plates? Wood charging plates. Depends on where you bought them. You could send me a picture, Terry, and I might be able to tell you what kind of wood they are. Sometimes I can tell. You can even like do a test burn and see what they smell like. Just make sure that they are unfinished for sure. But you could send me a message, Terry, and send me a photo, and I might be able to figure it out. I don't know. Usually heavy grain is pine. But you could send me a picture. I might be able to help. There's a Facebook group called What Kind of Wood Is This? Or something like that. And you post a picture and people will tell you what kind of wood it is. So that's pretty cool as well. There's a Facebook group for that. Trying to catch up. Okay, thank you everybody for the comments. I'm gonna keep going here. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So I can even add in some darker values on the underside of the bunny arm. Bunnies have arms now, so it's a bunny arm. You can see I'm leaving like a light section in there where the belly is, where the arm is overlapping the belly. I'm leaving kind of a light section in there, and I'm going to fill that in lightly here in a bit. And it just helps to create kind of a bottom reflection. Sometimes light bounces off the ground and shines underneath. So that will also help to create a little bit of a definition there. See, so once I put that in, it doesn't look really unnatural. And I can even blend it a little bit more like that. So the light is actually hitting the ground and bouncing up and reflecting onto the bunny's lower arm. So that's kind of what I'm doing right there. That's why I left that gap. Okay. Okay, so Terry, they're not charging. You got them at Hobby Lobby. They seem pretty soft and not finished. Hobby Lobby generally sells pine plates. I have some pine plates. If you turn it over on the backside and hit it with a burner at maximum temp, like the Versatool at max temp, if it immediately there's a plume of smoke, it's probably pine. If you have the razor tip even on a lower setting and just barely touch it and a big plume of smoke, it's probably pine. Hobby Lobby sells a lot of pine. So you want to wear a respirator or something with that. Okay. Arms appendages. Oh, Corbin, they're bunny arms. It's not a bunny appendage. I am totally, making this up as I go. But it's an arm. And they have elbows. I am not a science major. I am not a science person. I'm an artist. And if I say it's an arm, I'm going to burn an arm. Well, that's funny. Seriously, Corbin, are they called appendages and not arms? That's funny. What do you think, hon? Does the bunny have an arm or an appendage?
It's got a leg.
Well, no, I'm burning the arms. It's the front.
It's a front leg.
It's a front leg. That is probably true. My husband says it's a front leg. It's cuter if bunnies have arms. Corbin, they're called tentacles? Okay, now you're just messing with us. You're just messing with us. I am self-taught. So I guess I can call it whatever I want. But I think my husband takes the cake on that one. It's probably a four-leg. Just like a horse, right, hun? Horses have four legs and hind legs.
I'll have to look into that.
Okay. Oh, Corbin, I love it. That's so fun. I'm being silly too, so. We gotta make this fun here, guys. We got 2 hours of watching me burn bunny arms and bunny paws, so we gotta make it more interesting. add a little bit of spice. This is taking longer than I kind of thought it would, but that's okay. So you can see my version is a little bit lighter overall in the lighter tones. So I can go back and blend that down just a little bit. I think that'll kind of help things a little bit more. So I'll pull some shading down and push some shading up, and we'll just... Terry is saying I thought pine was hard. You know, Terry, there is a huge thing about softwoods and hardwoods that is quite technical. I'm calling a bunny with arms. So whether pine is hard or soft, it might depend on the type of pine. I don't know. So there's a huge debate out there whether, you know, certain woods are hard or soft and what makes them hard or soft. So it's, there's a lot of science to that too. I'm not qualified to answer if it's a hardwood or a softwood. I'm sorry, Terry. Larry, you're not a science person either. Okay. I love it, Barbara. Yep, their arms. You guys are so fun. Thanks, guys. Chris, you go outside and ask that bunny in the driveway. Okay, cool. Maybe that bunny will tell you. Yeah. Now, if it was a rabbit, we would be burning 4 paws or 4 legs and feet. But it's a bunny. You gotta use cute words with bunnies. Chris says he told me they were whatever we humans want to call them. That is a great answer. I love it. All right, so Rich has a question not related to bunny paws or bunny arms. Rich is saying, would you say the eyes are the focal point of art pieces like that? Does it draw in the observer of the art? If the eyes are visible, I would say yes. Sometimes we see animals like from a side view where we don't see much of their eyes. In that case, it's not so much a focal point, but when they're looking more straight on into the camera, I would really make sure that the eyes are as perfect as you possibly can, because that's usually the first thing that people do is make eye contact with something that has eyes. So make sure that they are as well done as you can make them, because that will give life to your subject. If the eyes are kind of, lifeless, it doesn't matter how well the fur is done, people will still notice those eyes aren't quite right. So eyes are hugely, hugely important in my opinion. Okay, Terry. Yeah, send me a pic for sure. Yeah. Barbara, you're worried that some of the wood sold online and at hobby stores might be a composite wood. I wish they would require a label on what it is. I agree. Sometimes you can tell by smelling the wood. Pine has a unique pine smell. Once you kind of get acquainted with the smell of wood, you can take a look. You can differentiate what the different types of woods are. But again, that just kind of takes some time. And like me, buying all the crappy kinds of pieces of wood and not knowing, and then trying to burn on it, and immediately I notice a different smell, a different texture, and a different look. And so I tend to avoid some types of wood in the future. But I could just look at wood now and tell if it's pine or basswood or that Paulina stuff or birch. So yeah, Angela, there are a dozen kinds of pine, and I believe some are softwood, some are hardwood, because there was like a big debate in one of these woodworking groups I was part of for a long time. And again, I don't know the values of hardwood versus softwood, so there's a lot of great information out there on the internet. There's some databases that tell you what's what and all that. So see our bunny feet and legs, our bunny paws and arms are, I think, a little bit maybe more exaggerated than the reference photo. We have some separation. I would probably go back and darken this entire paw up just a little bit to help make that pop, to push this one farther back and pull this one farther forward. So I might touch on that just briefly, and then we'll probably develop the belly, and then this upper part will go pretty fast. I don't know if I can get it all done in 30 minutes, but let's start the clock. So Corbin, you burn mostly on cedar. It's a soft wood and smells so good. What's your opinion on cedar? I love the smell of cedar. I have cedar boxes and I love it. I have not burned on cedar, but I have heard that cedar can cause irritations in the lungs. From the smoke. There's something in cedar that can really irritate your lungs. So be careful with burning cedar without a respirator. That's my knowledge on cedar. I love the way it smells though. Okay. Thanks, Tracy. All right. Thanks, Terry. All right, so I'm gonna try to throw this into overdrive here. I'm gonna darken this whole paw. It's really shaking. Okay. I just noticed the camera is shaking when I'm burning. Sorry, guys. See what I can do. Okay, so I just kind of darken that whole thing briefly. The bunny paw and arm in the background. So that'll create a little bit more of a definition and contrast, a value pop. Okay, so I like that better. All right, so all right, I'm actually going to switch to the the razor tip to kind of block in a little bit more of the fur, and then I'll kind of soften it up with the Versatool. I would like to get this done tonight, but we'll just see what we can do. So I'm at like a 4.5 right now, and I'm just going to kind of go to town here. Yeah, Corbin, do a little bit of research on the safety aspects of cedar. I've heard a few things, so just go ahead. There's a lot of information online, so go ahead and take a look at that for sure. So right now I have this point at kind of a flatter angle. I don't want really harsh lines for texture. Hey, you have a bunny anatomy. Okay. So I'm not going to show this because I don't want to get in trouble for copyright. But my husband found the English Grammar Club Parts of a Rabbit diagram. It is a 4-leg. Oh, but they do have a fluffy tail on the diagram. I love it. So the back feet are called foot. The front ones are called, they don't even say on the front one, they just say claws. Okay. They have a fluffy tail. So if the diagram shows fluffy tail as a description, I am totally going with arms and paws. Okay. Let's do this. A foot, toes.
And the 4/4.
A 4/4.
That's the hind quarter and the 4/4.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to finish this cute little rabbit in 30 minutes. So I'm just going to go to town here. It might be a little bit rough, but we're going to try to get this all blocked in. Because we took so much time on those cute paws and arms. So I've turned the burner up to almost 5 just because I'm trying to go a little bit faster here. Still, I'm focusing on the darker areas first and putting in our texture along with shading as we go. Chris Jones, you love the smell of Jack Daniels pen blanks when you turn them. Ooh, cool. I bet they would be great to burn on. Angela says hi.
Hi, Angela.
Terry, yeah, oh yeah. This is like the new thing with rabbits, whether they are arms or paws or feet or whatever. It's fun though. So even with this razor tip, the longer strokes that you make, the lighter your lines are going to be. The shorter strokes, the darker they're going to be. So just try to kind of plan that out as you go. What is anything without a good debate? We have to have a good debate. It promotes thinking, which I think is great. So I'm even putting in some lighter sections here of the fur, just to kind of get us moving along here. Although I'm still careful to make sure that I have some of that unburned wood underneath, because that creates such a nice sense of depth, I think, a brightness to your critter or whatever you're burning on. So I showed you guys the very careful mode, and now I'm showing you just like the crazy. Hey Jess. Alexis. Come here. You're gonna have to go to the back, please. Go to the other. Go to the back, please. Thank you. Okay. So now this is like the rough and crazy method. A lot of times I will do this just as an underpainting, if you could call it like an underpainting or an underburning. You don't have to be super careful and super precise and plan every stroke. You can just block in the overall feel. Hey, stop spot. I got one right there. So that happens, but you can just kind of be free and fluid and dive in to lay down some of the majority of the fur strokes and all that, and then go back and kind of refine things. Especially with fur, it's quite forgiving, because with each layer it tends to get better. Terry, we've settled it. Rabbits have feet and forearms. Bunnies have paws and arms.
Yes.
All right, my daughter agrees.
That's a bunny.
Barbara, yes, we're having pizza. It should come out of the oven around 8. So that's kind of our normal live stream Friday night is we do pizza. Because then I don't have to cook, which is nice. I like to cook, but it's nice to take a break too. So this is like the fast speed version here. Yes, Terry, totally. Stop spots happen, for sure. Rich is saying the fur has direction to it and a wavy look. Yes. Your main focus when you're blocking in fur, especially the darker sections, make sure you match the reference photo as far as the flow and feel of the fur. And I've said that many, many times, but fur flows. It has a continuation from one area to another. It curves, it flows. So you have to match the flow of the fur and the feel of the fur, meaning whether it's soft or coarse, curly, straight. So the flow and the feel of the fur, those are those two things that you really, really need to match. Terry, Will has already hunted and killed the pizza, and it is now in the oven. So he hasn't popped in yet to say hello, but he is the chef for tonight. So I'm jumping around just a little bit here, moving pretty quick. And every single stroke matches that that airplane mode. Corbin, that is a great question. Corbin is asking, what do you mean when referring to stop spots? Okay, so normally when you have any kind of a burner and you put the point on the wood and travel and then lift, you get stop spots where you've stopped your motion to put it on the wood and then you stop your motion to remove the point. So those are stop spots right there. When wood burning fur, it's okay to get a few of those in there. If you're burning something like portraits, it can be a nightmare. So to help reduce that stop motion, what we need to do is act like an airplane. And so when we put the point onto the wood, I'm going to turn this just a little bit, we're going to move the point and then slowly make contact and slowly lift off. That's a little bit of an odd angle, but you see the difference. So whenever you put the point on the wood, whenever you put the burner on the wood and lift it off, you always want like a U-shaped action. So you're going to swoop in. Let me get a better angle here. You're going to swoop in, land, and then take off. And that will help reduce, see, I don't have a stop motion where I've stopped and stopped again. So stop spots, that's what that is. Very good question. Very good question. So, and you can see throughout the project, I do have some of those stop and start spots. Normally you want to try to avoid those, but with fur, hang on, I want to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing here. But when it comes to fur, if you do get one of those stop spots, you can usually kind of blend it out to where it's not, you can hide it a little bit easier with the fur. So where did we see? We had stop spot. So there's a stop spot right there. If you look, I got one right there. Oh, good. Okay. So right there, I accidentally stayed in that one position too long. So in order to hide that, we're just going to build around it. Lower temps are a little bit better to build around that. And then I'm just going to kind of fill in some areas around it, and then it's not going to be quite so noticeable. If I had done that stop spot on like someone's cheek, I would either have to turn it into a freckle or start over or sand it. It would be a lot more work and effort to hide that. Whereas fur is a lot more forgiving. But very good question, Corbin. Very good question. I know we've talked about stop spots quite a bit throughout the tutorials, and I talk about it in my books. But thank you very much for asking about that. Terry says, hi, Will.
I'm not here.
I know. Sometimes he joins in on the live stream, not always. So you can see now that I've switched over to just the razor tip and I'm going really fast. See how coarse the fur is in here? Whereas this looks so soft and fluffy and it has almost like a sheen to it. Just blocking in the fur, it tends to get...
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Terry says hi.
Hi, people. Hi, people. Hi, Terry. Hello.
You're welcome, Corbin. I'm glad that helps.
I need to step away from game because it's making me angry.
Okay.
And don't want people to be hearing me.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, so I just step away for a second.
Hi, Steve. Glad you can be here. We had a heated discussion and a little bit of a debate early on as far as whether rabbits have, or bunnies have, legs or arms, feet or paws. So you can review the chat if you're interested in that one. But so glad that you're here, Steve. So a lot of this initial live stream was taken up with the arms and paws of said bunny, and we did a lot of development and pushing of values on that. And now I'm like in a race to block in the rest of Mr. Whiskers before we run out of time at 8 o'clock. So I've switched over to the razor tip and I'm moving just a little bit faster. So our fur is looking pretty coarse right now, but I want to get in a lot of our darker values. And then I'll kind of soften things up a little bit with the Versatool. But this is a very fast-paced and free style of wood burning. And if you want to try this, go for it. You can always kind of soften things out and blend them out later. And if you're stuck like on the time factor of wood burning takes so much time, go ahead and do this and block in the majority of it. And then go back and massage it and tweak it and soften it up a little bit. But just getting the values down on the wood is very kind of free, it kind of frees you up, and it's very invigorating, and I guess there's a lot of freedom in doing that. Just make sure that every stroke that you make, dip in and dip out. Rich, any questions tonight? That's a good question. I kind of posted a question on Facebook a day or so ago, meaning my question was, what is the main texture, actually your top 3 textures that you would really like to burn with confidence? So if you guys want to add that in the chat, you may, whether it's fur or eyes or skin or hair or clouds, trees, any kind of a texture. What are your top 3 textures that you really want to master at this point? So, John, thank you so much for hanging in there with us. I hope you have a great night. Get some sleep. Have a great night, John. Thanks so much for being here tonight. And love Scotland, too. Alrighty, so good night, Patricia. So even though I'm moving kind of fast, I'm really still focusing on these main ranges as far as the darker values. Thanks, Terry. Yeah, the rabbits are a lot of fun. I like this one because it had a nice variety of silky fur and then kind of some more chunky fur. It's a nice blend, I think. And its paws were really cute. So I'm still on the same, like almost 5 temp setting. I'm just moving really fast to put in some of these lighter values here. there's a big one. There's a big stop spot right there. Okay, Mina. Yeah, you weren't on Facebook. That's okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a little bit more feedback and information as far as what's best for you guys as far as the upcoming tutorials and where people mostly need help with. So this area right here on the chest of the bunny is going to be really soft. So we need to rock that burner down and make it really soft and fluffy for sure. Corbin, yeah, I'm in the western, the mountain time for sure. So very soft and mostly just shading on the chest, more shading, less texture to give it that real fluffy feel. Okay, so we've done kind of a really super fast blocking into the fur. Now let's try to blend it out and make it a little bit softer. All right. Okay, very good, everybody. Thank you for putting that in on the questions. Skin, yep, skin is very difficult. Fabric, smoke, skin. Fur, leather, and denim. Fabric, smoke, and skin, stop spots. Gotcha. Landscapes, natural bodies of water, sky, clouds, field, and skin. Very good. Yeah, those are all some of the top requested challenges for wood burning. So I'm going to really try to focus on those in the upcoming year. Wendy says skin, fingernails, hands, and teeth. Definitely. So Wendy, we did do a live stream video on wood burning of hands, including fingernails. So that is posted on my Patreon page. I think we did like 3 sessions of that. So was it like 6 hours of footage on how to do the wood burning of the hands. So a lot of great information there. So now I'm going to go back over and just make everything a little bit more fluffy and soft. I'm noticing that my camera is shaking a little bit more now that it's in a different position, but I'll figure that one out. So now that we have the bulk of the fur laid in, you just need to go back through and kind of smooth it and blend it out a little bit. And this is, I think, one of my favorite parts. It really brings life into the fur and creates a more well-rounded feature. Yeah, you might give him a bump, unless you want to take a look at it. Thank you. So you can see already just a little bit of soft shading over the top of that initial coarse layer. Really just give it that soft, fluffy, smooth appearance. Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions on those videos. There's this is our 36th live stream since late spring last year. We try to do a live stream every week, and we focused that one around Father's Day. So it was like June-ish, and it was a father's hand with a baby's hand. So that was a fun project. Very, very technical. We even showed how to transfer an image onto the wood on that one, especially with something so technical. So a lot of that first episode was where we actually transferred the lines onto the wood, where normally I don't do those on the live streams. Very great topic though. Yep, I think it was June, Mina. Yep. That's really cool, Rich. Yep, Terry Pizza's done. Corbin is saying, are you going to add any colored pencil? White, maybe. That is a good thought. Usually I do add some sort of colored pencil just because I really like it. I haven't decided, though, if I want to make this a white bunny or some of my favorite colored pencils that I like to add onto animals is white, and then kind of like a cream color and a reddish brown, and then a brown. Those are kind of some of my favorite ones to add for wildlife. I feel like it gives a very nice representation of the fur colors. I don't know, I haven't decided yet, so we'll have to see. So just kind of smoothing this out, evening it up a little bit, adding some really soft shading. It would be like a level 2 on the shading scale. If you haven't seen the shading scales that I teach, it's like they're in my book. I plan on putting those out more online. But it's a light mid-tone is all we're adding right now to kind of soften things up. Hello, CSA25. Glad you can be here. So I'm going to kind of like hide that stop spot just a little bit. Wow, we're getting close on this rabbit, guys. It's a bunny. All right, but I'm hurrying. I'm going real fast. But it's amazing how fast you can create this if you just kind of chunky block in the darker values and then go and smooth everything out later. So I've shown you a couple different ways about going with approaching fur. I think this rabbit had a rough night in its burrow, and so its fur is a little bit disheveled. So that would go nicely with my wood burning right about now. And if I want to smooth out the fur, I can do that with just a few more layers and take my time. But right now he's got like that, what is it, the wind-blown bunny kind of appearance. Alrighty. Hi, Patricio. Greetings from Chile. Greetings as well. Glad you can be here tonight. So interestingly, on this back, we're going to have to change the direction of our fur quite quickly. On this side, it's kind of like angled this way, where on the back it's angled that way. So we have to create kind of a fan-shaped pattern to make the transition here, which is really important to the overall look of Mr. Whiskers. And same thing here. We're gonna have to transition to a fan pattern to make that change in fur. Kind of like that, the way it sweeps around. Whew, I think we're getting close, guys. I had to throw it in overdrive, but we got like 3 minutes left. So any questions as we're kind of wrapping up tonight's session? Whew. All right, let me zoom out just a little bit here. Let's take a look at Mr. Whiskers. And I apologize for like going so fast in the last little part of this video, but I wanted to kind of give you an overall completion on this for tonight. Thanks, Tracy. Hope you have a great night. So we have it blocked in quite nicely. What I would do to kind of finish this would be, we need to develop more midtones here in the belly range and behind the elbow, and a little bit more softness right in this like the shoulder nook. I'd also soften and darken some of these areas here. So thanks, guys. Do you want to see another session of this next Friday where we kind of really just take our time to blend things out and then maybe do like a Q&A afterwards, or do you want to see a new subject? So go ahead and take a couple minutes and tell me continue or new. So yeah, I just want to know what you want, because I could definitely spend another hour or more on this rabbit, just blending and smoothing and just kind of nitpicking at it. If you want to see that, I can do that. If you don't, we can do something new. I could also do like an impromptu video on this and just post it out on Facebook, but not on our Friday night. Terry, finished Mr. Whiskers, okay. Larry, a new project, okay. Jim says, what will the background be? Continue, okay. Green Mina. Continue the project, okay. Thank you, Lynx Lady. Because, you know, honestly, I get a project to this point here on Livestream, and then I can take, you know, another hour or 2 hours or more to kind of round it out and finish it out and make it to my liking. So, okay. All right, everybody's kind of mixed here on this. So one thing that I could do is I can take some time during this next week and I'll film this live. And if you're subscribed and all that, you'll get a notification that I'm going live, and then you can join in if you want, and you can watch that, or you can come back to the video and kind of fast forward too. So I think what I'll do is I'll do this on a live stream impromptu this week. Next week we will start something new on Friday. So thank you guys so much for your feedback. And thank you so much for being here. So I think we'll do both. I'll finish the film out and show it during the week, and then you can always go back and refer to it. So, Jim, yeah, I don't know what I want to do with the background on this one. We'll see. Once the bunny is kind of blocked in a little bit more, I'll maybe decide. So thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful and safe weekend, and look forward to seeing you sometime next week on an impromptu live stream if you're available to join. or I will see you next Friday. Okay, sounds good, Terry. I think we can kind of make everybody happy here. So cool. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Barbara. Hope you guys, everybody has just a lovely, lovely weekend. Good night, Angela. Thanks, Steve, for being here. Really appreciate it. All right, guys. Hope you all have a lovely week, and we will talk later. Good night, Terry. Good night, Wendy. Thanks, Lynx Lady. Yeah, Lynx Lady, I spent like another 6 hours on the elephant after the live stream. So, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of just fine-tuning. Good night, Larry. Good night, Lexi. Good night, Rich. Good night, Hand Graving. We'll see everybody next week.